think I'm being followed.
My dad is turning green, like, literally green.
My last nav check put me at Lagrange point 4.
This is Control. We read you. Keep calm and remain on the guard frequency.
Sits and sieves, captains and commanders, you've tuned to the guard frequency. And as all good pilots know, when you're out in the deep black, you want to keep one ear on the guard. This is episode 169 of the Best Damn Space Sim podcast ever, and was recorded on Friday, May 26th, and made available for download Tuesday, May 30th, over at guardfrequency.com. I'm Jeff.
I'm Ostron, and doing double duty this week as both booth babe and host is our best buddy, mate, pal, Henry.
Hello.
So, what do we have in store this week, Henry?
In this week's Squawk Box, we check up on Juno, who's been checking up on Jupiter. Next, we see what news from your favorite space sims has landed as we bring the Eclipse into light for Star Citizen, and patches 2.3.10 and 2.4, along with strange things lurking in the deep black for Elite Dangerous. Finally, we tune into the feedback loop and let you join in on the conversation.
That takes care of the housekeeping, so let's get on with the show and see what's coming through the Squawk Box.
Any of you boys seen a carrier around here?
Everything's under control. Situation normal.
Cryptor, this is Jeff saying welcome to the Squawk Box, everyone. A few weeks ago, everyone was abuzz about the Cassini probe diving through Saturn's rings. Now it's Juno that's stealing the spotlight over at Saturn's proverbial neighbor. The Juno space probe is tasked with studying Jupiter, and it began taking readings on August 27th of 2016, I believe. It's different from other probes that have gone to Jupiter because its orbit takes it very close to the cloud tops, only a few thousand kilometers up. In addition to visually surveying the clouds, it uses a type of microwave probe to study more of the interior of the planet. As of May 25th, the scientific community was ready to release some preliminary reports on the probe's finding. One of the first things that is puzzling scientists is gases on the gas giant. They had assumed that Jupiter's atmosphere would be mostly uniform, with gaseous mixtures remaining fairly consistent over wide areas. Instead, they were finding a lot of variation in the distribution of gases. They cited ammonia as an example. They found areas of Jupiter with fairly low concentrations, and then other regions where the ammonia seemed to be coming up from deeper in the planet like a geyser. The other thing they mention as odd is the planet's magnetic field. It's stronger than they thought it would be, and again, it's not uniform across the area being studied. The working theory is that elements in Jupiter itself are messing with the magnetic field, similar to how scientists believe sunspots form. The third thing that scientists have been thrown by, so far, is the planet's core. Based on Juno's readings from the core, it seems that it's made up of heavier elements, which they expected. What they didn't expect was the core seems to be taking up half of Jupiter's interior volume. That also means elements comprising it aren't tightly packed as scientists were expecting. Sorry, Arthur C. Clarke fans, planet-sized diamonds may not be in the cards after all. The next big step for Juno is the giant red spot. Its current orbital trajectory has a probe doing a flyover on July 11th. It sounds like it's got some gastrointestinal problems.
I'm excited for the red spot flyover. All this stuff is great too, but I'm really excited for the red spot flyover. I mean, how long is that really going to be there? It's been going for, I think, hundreds of years, right? I mean, it's not something that's been there forever. We're talking... Because that's not something that's going to be there forever. So we're having an opportunity to study it now up close while we still have it.
It's definitely been there for a long time.
Yeah, it's been there for a long time, but I know it's not something that's expected to be permanent.
Have you seen any of the pictures that they've posted about that have come back from Juno?
Oh, yeah, some really cool stuff. They're talking about it being close, a few thousand, or what is it, thousands of kilometers, but that is close when you consider Jupiter's size.
Yeah. Well, the other problem being if you get much closer, you're not getting out because Jupiter still has the intense gravity, even if the composition of the planet's a little looser than they were thinking.
And radiation, from what I understand, there's terrible radiation near Jupiter, so getting close to study
it's almost as bad as a star.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I just checked the red spot's been going for about 187 years. So it came about after we were already observing the planet as a species. So how long could it be? That's gonna be interesting to fly over it. It's just fortunate that we're observing it at a time while it's running.
I thought it was interesting that information they got about the core possibly taking up half of the interior volume. That's enormous.
I don't understand how they're defining the core. If it takes up half of the internal volume, doesn't that have, components and layers too? Or are they saying that much of the volume is generally uniform and would be the core? You know what I mean? Doesn't that depend on how you define it?
Yeah, they seem to be defining it as there must be a cutoff in what elements are comprising it, because I assume gas giant, anything that isn't gaseous would by default make up the core.
I'd be interested to see in there a graphic representation, how much is mantle and how much is crust versus the core, and then how much of the volume is actually the gas.
Well, if there even is any mantle per
That's
se,
a good point.
because
Yeah.
I think, by definition, the mantle has to be comprised of molten rock, which rock would have its own scientific definition. So if none of that's present, it's just basically you've either got gases or solid elements.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think
that
the core
maybe-
is solid. It's like metallic elements, isn't it? But it's not solid. Probably in a more liquid state, I guess.
Well, most cores are liquid. I mean, our own
Yeah.
cores comprise of nickel and iron, but it's in liquid form.
Right. They're taking all these readings with a microwave probe, so it's not like they have a core sample, but they say that it's not as tightly packed as they were expecting. So it might not be at the scale we're talking, it still would be a sphere, but it's not going to be like a marble.
Yeah.
It would be more like the only thing that's coming to my head is those little pet chew toys that have little spikes on them sticking out.
So there's a chew toy at the center of Jupiter. Yep. That's great.
You heard it here first. Chew toys at the center of Jupiter. Forget the diamonds.
Read, seen, or heard something you might find interesting to others listening on the spectrum? Send an email to squawk@guardfrequency.com. But for now, let's see what news has hit the flight deck.
Speed 175, Port Bay, hands on approach, checker screen, call the ball.
Don't get technical with me.
As has become the custom, midway through the week, CIG released the Q&A for the Eclipse. Attempting to clear up some of the outstanding questions or unclear facts, the overall tone of the Q&A can be summed up like this. It's a stealth bomber. It was designed to be a stealth bomber. It's supposed to be used as a stealth bomber. It's not a dogfighting ship, and it's definitely not a cargo carrier. There, we answered the question. We think you can use it as a stealth bomber, but the jury's still out. Just kidding, it's a stealth bomber. Really, it is a stealth bomber. The ship is supposed to sneak in, launch torpedoes, and then bug out. Pretty stealthy to me. To quote the Q&A, if you intend to hang around after attacking, then the Eclipse is not the ship for this, and you really should have your pilot's license revoked. And a Gladiator or Harbinger are much more suited to that role. They also indicated that the travel range of the ship puts it above the Gladiator but below the Harbinger. Hopefully this will be helpful to some of you in balancing the capabilities of your organizations.
There was a question about how much of a threat this bomber represents, since we don't know too much about anti-capital weaponry in-game yet. Based on the answer, CIG's intent is that this bomber should have no problem taking out something like a Connie or a Starfarer in one pass. When going up against an Idris, their strikes will probably only be able to disable key systems, and then only if they hit with targeted strikes. They're supposed to soften up the enemy before anyone knows they're there. Heavier bombers, like the aforementioned Harbinger, would come in after to finish the job after everyone's alerted to the attack.
At least one other person shared the concerns we brought up last show, the existence of a stealth ship when the concept of stealth in Star Citizen is not well defined. In the answer they gave, CIG revealed a little more about their intended ship component system. Apparently all ship components will have a classification: military, civilian, industrial, stealth, or competition. The primary thing that makes the Eclipse a stealth vehicle is that it was optimized for and comes with components that are all stealth class by default, though other types can be swapped out. The stealth class items are apparently designed by default to contribute less to the ship's heat and EM signature. Presumably there will be some trade-offs, but the component class names and the brief explanation of stealth was the only information they revealed. Stealth sounds awesome, that's cool, I like the way they're doing it. It's all instrument stealth, there's no fake cloaking, I think it's cool.
I think stealth is necessary in an advanced technological society such as this, especially a spacefaring one. I mean, this is really the first time in the many years this game has been in development, this is really the first time they really approached stealth at all.
Yeah, at least dedicated. And unfortunately, like we've been saying, there's still not a clear picture of how stealth is working.
Right. The only thing that we've ever thought about of stealth is the data gatherers, for example, the spy ships or so, where they're EM masking and so forth. And that was never really clearly defined as either.
Right. Well, plus everybody assumed with those ships that you would go in somewhere and then essentially shut down everything on the ship except the sensors, because that's all you need. This is a ship that needs to move, target things, fire weapons, and then continue moving, all while maintaining some level of stealth, which we just don't know how that works.
I'd imagine stealth is going to be something where it'd be a detection based on your EM level, also based on your distance from whatever is detecting you. So a stealth ship would be able to get closer to a target before it would be detected, but I'd assume you would eventually be detected based on what gear you're carrying, how it's rated, that kind of thing. It's just saying this is preloaded with stuff that's going to be lower EM signatures and probably makes it easier for stealth. I'm sure shutting things down, at least I'm hoping, adds to that stealth rating so that you can get even closer and manage your systems as a gameplay technique or a gameplay tactic. Should be something like that. I think that's deeper than what Elite has going with its stealth mode. Yeah. It's much deeper. It's very
they've been talking about all of that. It's just right now we're in the, I mean, as with so many other mechanics in Star Citizen, we're in the waiting period where they've described what they want to do. We just haven't seen how it works yet. Because it could just be, a simple rock, paper, scissors. If you're X kilometers away from a ship and the ship is outputting this much EM and infrared, then you can see them. And if you're farther away, then you can't. And then it's just a simple stock values. But we don't know if, for example, is it easier to detect a ship that's going full thrust versus one that's coasting? You would assume so,
yeah,
but then
definitely.
Again, yeah, but also, I mean, the other thing also is, does it matter where you are in relation to that ship? Like, if a ship is going directly toward you, does it matter how fast they're going? Because all the infrared radiation's being ejected out behind
That's a good point. And Star Citizen is the only game where I would say maybe they would consider that. Because that's, that's just something I wouldn't expect. It would be too deep for, I think, a lot of games to try to go there. But I could see them doing something like that in Star Citizen, where they want to really nail down the detail.
The other thing, and this is a slight topic change, but the thing that annoyed me in the Q&A, and for once this is not an annoyance directed at CIG, is every single time a ship has come out, one of the most popular questions seems to be, can I do whatever this ship is not supposed to do? And I know for the Q&As the questions are curated by CIG, but presumably some people have to have asked, and at least a good number of people have to have asked. Because with this one, it's, hey, here's a stealth bomber. Can I turn it into a cargo hauler? And then a while back it was hey, there's a cargo hauler. Okay, can I dock ships on it and make it a carrier?
Well, I bet you those are actually injected questions by CIG because they want to get the message out. And it does make sense if look, I'm going to jump into this game and I'm going to do whatever, and I'm going to pick my favorite ship and do it. That's not how this game works. This isn't a one-ship-fits-all kind of scenario. And I think CIG wants to get that sorted out.
I think you're hitting it on the head.
Well, there are ships that are more one ship fits all, like the Connie, or to a certain extent,
to a certain extent,
the Freelancer. I mean, none of them are experts. It's the jack of all trades problem. It's going to be equally bad at everything.
What you guys are saying is probably exactly right, but the fact that everybody who's playing to some extent wants to be Han Solo and have that jack of all trades ship that they can fly, that can do whatever they want to do. It's in a game like Star Citizen where it's going to be open. You're going to want to have options. You're not going to want to be tied down to I'm a bomber and a military, and that's it. You know, so everybody wants that Han Solo ship, but you need these specialty ships too, or, you know, everybody would be bored with the same multi-role ship. So I get why they do it. I think it's great, but I totally get why we get the question. Everybody asks the same question, because deep down everybody really wants the ship they want to be able to fill multiple roles. And as soon as they see one they like, they're like, man, that could be my Millennium Falcon, and it's not going to happen in this case. But it's going to be a great ship.
You know, the Connie is the perfect Millennium Falcon. I think if you put a larger size power plant or a larger size set of engines on it, it really could be that Millennium Falcon for everybody.
And Chris Roberts actually has said that the Connie is designed to be the Millennium Falcon type ship.
And that's why I bought one. I mean, that's why I have that ship. I mean, I don't expect it to take it on my normal search and rescue runs. On the larger ship battles, I might set up a med bay and be a triage hospital or something like that. But it is definitely, I see that as probably my main ship that I'll be flying all the time. I just want to turn it into a Phoenix. That's all I want to do.
Don't forget they said that the new ship should be able to take out a Connie in a single pass. So that's something to consider.
Yeah, but that's... I mean, I feel like using this ship to take out a Connie is using a cannon to kill a mosquito.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
I do realize the need for specialty ships, and I agree with it. I think there should be specialty ships. I'm having a tough time finding a civilian use for this ship. Like, I can't see where a regular player would be able to make regular use of this craft.
I agree. I think this is a general corporate asset, you know.
Yeah.
Where you have 5 or 6 of these and you're going into battle and, you know, you need to pilot them up and you assign pilots to them but they remain a corporate asset. I really don't see this ship being a pirate. Maybe. There's no value in them pirating from this ship, but they could be, if they were a small pirate group, they might have one to, you know, knock down the bigger ship, but that's really all I can really...
If they're going after a Hull E, maybe, to take out the engines. But anything smaller, and they probably risk blowing up the whole ship and any of the cargo they'd want to steal. Our Star Citizen community question: are more details making the Eclipse any more attractive to you? If you have one already, are you planning to use it yourself or with an organization? Tell us your plans for the ship through our usual channels. Details are coming up.
On the horizon for Elite Dangerous is the 2.3.10 update. What points will it update, you might ask? Zach from FDev says the patch mostly contains minor under-the-hood fixes for game stability around planet surfaces and bug fixes. Are those bugs on the planet surface or are they bugs in the game? Anyway, I digress. There's also the much-requested Anaconda cockpit appearance change and adjustments to multi-crew, allowing hosts to disable or limit members' activity. There will be a beta, but few truly new mechanics to test.
The current title for the big 2.4 update is question marks. Our top research badgers suggest there may be a mystery involved. It will also feature a bit of a change of release pace. Instead of one big drop of content, it'll be released more slowly over time. In this specific case, they will be releasing, and this is a direct quote, more. There have been some discoveries made in-universe as well. Another generation ship has been located, this time by Commander Dillium, giving us one more clue to the mystery surrounding derelict ships.
But I did want to talk about these ships they're finding. I haven't read the story of the new one. I just checked the video. You know, I've been gone for a few weeks and I'm just getting back. So I'm going over the videos for the new generation ships, but I've watched all the videos and read all of the transcripts from the logs for the ones they found, and it seems all the ships they find are dead.
Well, that's disappointing.
It is disappointing. All these terrible, tragic stories, and some of them are leading to things where you would think maybe related to the Thargoids or related even to the Guardians. So some of it leads you that way. But I'd like to see us find a generation ship that's thriving. You know, there's got to be a few generation ships that are just getting to their destinations and aren't completely screwed out there. That's what I'd like to see. But maybe that's what the mega ships are. Maybe some of the mega ships are generation ships that have just continued to go on. We haven't really heard about that yet. It's possible that's what that is.
Yeah, do they give a lot of information in the Elite lore about how the generation ships are supposed to function? Because I know that in a number of sci-fi universes, when generation ships arrive at their destinations, they're basically supposed to be cannibalized in order to set up the society or the settlement on wherever their destination is. But if it's the case where they just have a mega load of cargo that gets unloaded for that purpose, the generation ship could then turn into one of the mega ships.
Right. These were all originally colony ships. I think in the lore they say something like 70,000 of them. I'd have to check that number, but I think it's 70,000 of them, which seems like a lot of generation ships to have been sent out from Earth before supercruise and hyperspace travel.
I mean, depending on where they were going, if they were all going to different destinations, that's all.
They were, yeah.
But if they were like
spread out, they were colonizing the local area, so they're all kind of in the bubble. You know, they're all kind of close because they could have only gotten so many light years out.
I meant if each of the 70,000 ships was going to a unique destination, that seems like a lot. But if there were like streams going to a couple of destinations,
I'd imagine that's
that
what was
would
happening.
make more sense.
I know a lot of them, they say had made it to their destinations. The ones that we're finding in the lore are called the missing. They're the missing ships. So it makes sense that a lot of them are derelict. I'm just hoping that we find one that's not. In particular, and shoot me because I can't remember the name of the ship, but one of them, and I don't want to spoil it anyway, so I'm not going to say the name of it and tell its story, but one of the ships, in its backstory, reading the logs, they talk about ships dropping out of supercruise near them and harassing them, these pirates. So it's interesting to me that a generation ship is leaving logs where they're interacting with pilots that have modern technology and are using supercruise the way we do. So at least this one ship at one point was still operational in modern times when, you know, and people were going there and actually interacting with it. Not players, but other NPCs in the lore, if you know what I mean. They were saying pirates were harassing them and dropping
That's
out of
sort of a bad policy thing.
How do you mean?
No, I mean like in-universe policy. Like, you would think that as soon as everyone figured out supercruise, like, if not item 1, then at least in the top 10 would be, hey, why doesn't somebody zip out to the generation ships that are still en route and sort of catch them up on what's going on?
That's a good point, but it's possible that these generation ships had just become these communities, a civilization on its own, moving through space, and the people who drop by in supercruise are visitors. I'm sure some of their population would leave with visitors, and some would, you know, come back and visit the generation ship on its voyage, but I'm sure a lot of people who were born there, lived there, their parents lived there, would stay, and that would be a thriving civilization still, as long as they weren't being killed mysteriously like all of these seem to have.
Well, yeah, but I mean, they, like, somebody, not necessarily, like, interrupting the missions, I just mean having somebody go out and check on them and say, okay, yes, it's where we thought it would be, like, to take them off the list of
Exactly,
missing.
And that's my point. Now that they're there and we can find them using these beacons, there are beacons that you can find that have part of the log, and you can determine where they are based on these logs you find in the beacons. And then you go out and you find this generation ship. Exactly what you're saying, 100%, except everyone you find is dead, apparently. I haven't heard of any that are alive. If anybody is finding generation ships and somebody's alive, let me know if they're interactable, or if you can land on them, or if anybody's alive on them. So far, they've all been just derelicts with really some good stories, some things that you know I don't want to spoil, because there's not a whole lot to go out and explore in Elite, and you should go out and check out these ships on your own, at least find out where they are and then go explore them. They're all close to the bubble. You can get to them easily, so I don't want to spoil it, but the stories are really good, and I appreciate the work they're putting into them. I just want to be able to land at some and talk to some people that are different. So what do you think, Jeff? If a ship left Earth, say 500 years ago, and was going very slowly, and then we have the invention of supercruise technology and we can move faster, do you think a lot of the population on that slow ship would stay there out of tradition? Or do you think they'd leave that in favor of modern technology that can get them where they're going faster?
Well, depends on how many generations have passed since they left Earth. I think if you're 1 or 2 generations out, they'll probably want to continue the trip. However, if you're 6 or 7 or 8 generations into it, then you probably would want to hurry up and get to where you're going.
In Elite, you're talking 500 to 700 years ago. We're talking, it's 3303 now, and we're talking these left, 500 to 700 years ago before Super Cruise. So we're talking generations and generations on these.
Then they probably would want the technology to go super.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that would happen too. I mean, I could see some wanting to stay as long as there was still interaction with the outside world, but I can't imagine there might actually be like an Amish society. And this week's Elite Dangerous community question: have you taken a trip out to M67? Have you found a generation ship with some living, breathing people on it and can brighten my day with the info? Tell us what you know at the usual places. Details coming up after feedback.
Now it's time for news we didn't use. Everspace officially released on the 26th on Steam and GOG, or GOG. The final major updates for 1.0 were inclusion of the story elements of the game and removal of the scanning probe items, proving to be a detriment to gameplay.
iNove continue their work on Infinity Battlescape, finalizing the artwork and silhouettes. Netcode is being slowly integrated, and if we're betting on it, we reckon Alpha will be Q3 2017.
I was really excited for Everspace, and then things got complicated and I haven't had a chance to play any games in like 2 weeks. So I have that sitting there. I had it pre-ordered and I'm hoping to play it soon, except Star Trek Bridge Crew comes out this week also, which is going to suck up all of my time. So I hope one of you guys gets to play Everspace.
I've been playing up through development because I backed the Kickstarter. So it's, I was really looking forward to the story elements being integrated, because for me it always helps if a game has some sort of story behind it. So even if there isn't much that develops the story, having something there always helps my enjoyment. It's interesting that they decided to get rid of the scanning probes, because those have been in there since day one.
What do you think would be, what's the detriment to gameplay then?
Well, basically what it was is the scanning probes were items that you could use. So the way Everspace works, for those who aren't aware, is that you jump your ship into different sectors, and each sector has a series of waypoints on it. So each waypoint you travel to, and that's where you do the fighting, the finding items, and upgrading, and so forth. The scanning probe allowed, it basically revealed all of the items in an area. And apparently they said, as they were watching gameplay, what was happening is all the players would go into an area and just automatically use the scanning probes. They were craftable items, so if you had the resources, you could craft more of them. And they said the way that it ended up happening is it became a must-do. Like, it just became a routine drain where they hadn't expected it, because all of the players were going in, immediately using a probe, building another one in the next center, immediately using it. So they felt like it had become an obligation, and players were assuming that you couldn't be successful unless you had scanning probes to use in every sector, which isn't the way they wanted it to work, because they wanted there to be a minimal exploration of the area. And the way it was being played is people would just go in, fire a probe, immediately know where everything was, move on, and then it just became more of, not exactly a fetch quest, but...
Yeah, I get it.
That's exactly what happens in Elite with the Advanced Discovery Scanner. You hit it once, you see the entire sector, and, people like that. I like that because you want to see kind of what's around, but I get why they're not doing that in Everspace.
Right, but with Elite, there's it's not literally infinite, but near infinite stuff to go find.
That's true, but the amount of time you spend in a system most of the time is minimal because you just hit that button and go. I'm glad they're doing something different in Everspace.
Yeah. Plus, there's you can only spend so much time in a sector before enemies start jumping in and swarming you to the point where you literally can't win. And so the scanning probe thing if you're using it all the time, it sort of takes away from the difficulty, because part of the challenge is supposed to be how long do I spend in a place looking for stuff that might be hidden versus getting my ass out of it.
Makes sense.
Well, now that we're all caught up with the latest news, let's tune into the feedback loop and let you join in on the conversation.
Okay, buddy, what's on your mind?
We're all friendlies! So let's just be friendly!
Some say he once did on a which is why you can't get them in Chechnya. But all we know is he's called the Shiv, and he helped put together this week's feedback. A recap of last week's community questions. For Star Citizen, was CIG's CCU charge another thinly veiled money grab by CIG, or was it a combination of bad messaging and whining from backers who see a loophole being closed, or at least narrowed?
Relatedly, do you think the Eclipse buzz and marketing was effective? Are you going to be adding one or more to your hangar?
For Elite Dangerous, what are your feelings on the community-sponsored megaship? Do you agree with the judge's choice for the winning CAS video?
XX Silent Ruin XX wrote in and said, regarding community question 1, holy crap, this reads exactly like clickbait. Why would you phrase something like a clickbait article? You know, where you actually pose the hook in such a way it draws readers in via the most controversial phrasing possible. I guess my true question is, did you intentionally make it a clickbait title to attract viewers? I mean, it's fine if it was, I just can't stand those who actually do this sort of thing and don't realize it. This was actually a post on Reddit. Shiv responded that there was an ongoing debate like you do, but I thought we could get our official reply on this topic out there from whoever wrote the question. And I'll address that at the end of
Sean Newboy writes in, as always. Sean, wonderful job, everyone. Community question. Bad messaging mechanism. I like the idea of credits devaluing over time. As for the Eclipse, wonderful ship, but you should already know my thoughts on a $275 ship.
Rebel writes in, supporting the CCU system and paying CS for when it goes wrong is not free. A charge for people who incessantly flail around, either to try to turn a profit or because they can't make a decision for more time than the average ping time on Arena Commander, was not that unreasonable. And come on, we're talking about a $5 transaction on ships costing 60 times as much. Now that being said, I think that withdrawing CCU is the right call. The ships were supposed to be the reward for the funding pledge and not the end goal itself. There are now over 100 ships announced, so the whole idea of concept sales at this point is doing the game a disservice. And I think no more should be conducted until after Squadron 42 drops.
Bree Serena wrote in and said, hello all. Love the scripted intros. Do they have to be nearly 10 minutes long? Anyway, keep up the great work. Star Citizen question 1. I honestly don't think that $5 zero CCU thing was a money grab. Like Shiv said, and in that case she was actually talking about me, Ostron, I think it was more of an accounting thing that somebody noticed, and probably to make money off the profiteers on the gray market, also to incentivize people to think about their choices. I actually like the solution that Jake Acapella and Paul Shelley, Astropub, proposed on the Relay podcast, which is allow $0 CCUs during the concept phase, which expire at the end, when it's flight ready, expiring after a week, and when it's finally balanced, expiring after a week. I think this community seems to love to blow things out of proportion, but the most vocal out of this CCU debacle were either the exploiters, the backers who have multi-ship packages that don't have a clue what fleet they want, or the people who don't want to be nickeled and dimed. Everyone else didn't care about it, as far as I was able to read anyway.
On community question 2, although I do like the specialized marketing gimmicks that CIG drops from time to time, for this ship I don't know if the build-up was appropriate to the ship we received. If the ship was as big as a freelancer or a bit more maneuverability, pun intended, in what roles it could be used in, I could justify the marketing, but I felt a little lackluster, in my humble opinion. Regardless of that, though, I purchased the concierge version because I needed a stealthy bomber in my fleet for the orgs that I belong.
The Real Gremlick writes, the $0 CCU BS? People don't like their free stuff taken away. Besides, 1% of backers held over 1 million $0 CCUs according to CIG.
And Ken from Chicago finished it off with, nope, I'm interested in a purely military ship. YMMV.
Your mileage may vary.
CCU marketing? Poor communication. It's a problem for a lot of it. So, in response to the phrasing of the community question, Silent Ruins complaint, it wasn't designed to be clickbait because, at least in my opinion, clickbait is artificially exaggerating the importance of something that's fairly mundane. Like, these 5 things have been discovered, number 3 will blow you away, when it probably won't. I was phrasing it more as like an old-time news hook is fairly standard practice in journalistic or pseudo-journalistic endeavors. It's sort of the purpose of headlines and why they're phrased them. So anyway, that was the motivation behind that. It was worded more like we used to word the debate questions than our community questions, but given the controversy around the topic, it seemed appropriate.
In general feedback, a friend called 5 says, I really like the podcast, but I have a bit constructive criticism for you. All, in my opinion, feel free to ignore. The drama segment you do at the start is rather odd. To be honest, it doesn't work for me at all, but it is your thing, and I think it would put people off who started listening to the show not knowing that they have to listen to 5 minutes of it before the actual show starts. It might be better for you all to put that segment at the end of the show so people get a better first impression. Keep up the good work.
Chris Trone writes, 14 seconds in and I'm already laughing. I hope my commute is longer than this episode. That's good feedback.
And I also have comments on it, so I'll let you go first, Henry.
I just want to say I totally get what he's saying there in that the preludes aren't representative of everything that we kind of do, but they are kind of a fun thing that we all like doing, and a lot of our listeners like them. Maybe it would be good to have it after the intro where we could talk about it in the intro, and then people would know what all's coming, including part of a prelude. I don't usually participate in them because I have no acting skills whatsoever, but they're always a kick to listen to. What did you have to say there, Jeff?
Well, I've been on every single episode except one due to the Act of the Gods, and I've done almost every single prelude as well. Preludes are designed to be funny. If they didn't reach your funny bone, I'm sorry, but they are a prelude. They take scenarios out of the games that we play, and we get to mess around with some of the words and language and whatnot, and they're not an every show thing. So I think where they are is perfect. I don't think we need to explain them. I don't think we need to, dissect them. And if you don't like the prelude, there's always the fast forward button on the media player. That's just my 2 cents.
And if you love them, there's a rewind button too, and you can listen to it twice.
A little bit of history for newer listeners who might not be aware. The preludes were born out of a segment that used to be in the podcast called Nuggets for Nuggets, which the original purpose of that was to explain game mechanics that were being introduced in Star Citizen during development. This is obviously, way back in the mists of time when there was a lot more stuff that wasn't fleshed out yet. Initially, the segments were just straight up information dumps by the hosts in prose, much like we do with the flight deck. Later on, they became skits or like commercials. They were done as more like advertising that included all of the information about the mechanics that were being discussed. After we essentially ran out of new game mechanics and shifted the format of the show so it covered more than just Star Citizen, we kept the preludes, or what are now the preludes, as just pure comedy skits, because we do have a segment of our listeners that enjoy them. Obviously, they're not for everybody. I mean, they are a particular brand of humor most of the time, and humor isn't universal. We realize that. But we have received feedback that they're a part of the show that sort of sets us apart. And, we did have at least 1 out of 3 feedbacks that says they were great and we should keep doing them. So as Jeff pointed out, they're fairly predictable. The last one was a little bit lengthy as compared to some others, but basically if you don't hear the distress calls right away when you start the podcast, there's a prelude coming. So skip forward 5 minutes or so, and if you still hear odd voices or weird accents or Lennon, then keep skipping.
We do have some really neat ones in the can, or not in the can, in development, I should say.
Yeah.
But we just got to get all the people together to do it. Our new Patreon this week is no new Patreon. Oh, bummer. And this week's community question: are more details making the Eclipse any more attractive to you? And if you have one already, are you planning to use it for yourself or with an organization?
Have you taken a trip out to M67? Have you found a generation ship with some living, breathing people on it and can brighten my day with the info?
Drop us an email, a tweet, a comment on our show posts, which you can find on our website and over on our Facebook page.
So, how is the show? Are you finding us to be vibrant and healthy, or are we just a dead husk that's centuries old? Either way, let us know. Nothing personal. Either way, let us know. Here's how you can get in touch with us. Why not leave us a comment on this show's post over at guardfrequency.com?
Or hit us up on Twitter at GuardFreak, or you can leave a comment and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/GuardFreak.
You can also use the contact form on our website, and all the details on the ways you can get in touch with us can be found in the show notes. Your feedback is an important part of what we do, so take a minute and tell us what's on your mind.
And that brings us to the end of episode 169 of Guard Frequency. We'll be back with episode 170 on June 6th. So be sure to keep your eye out for our shows over at guardfrequency.com.
But that's not all. You can also subscribe to our shows at feeds.guardfrequency.com or by searching for us on iTunes. And if you're not doing anything Friday nights, then you should come join us at 10 p.m. Central as we record Guard Frequency live over at twitch.tv/guardfreak.
Do you like what we do? Want to help us make the best damn space sim podcast ever? Drop us an email to squawk@guardfrequency.com. And you can also support the show by visiting our website, clicking on the Patreon logo, and becoming a regular subscriber. For just $1.25 a week, you'll get access to the raw recordings of our live shows, some Guard Frequency goodies, and an invitation to our private Elite Dangerous Flight group. We want to thank all our Patreons who support us with their subscriptions week on week, and hope that you'll consider making a regular contribution, because the more support we get, the better show we can make.
Are you looking for a friendly wingman or two? We're active in most space sims and would love to have you join us. Check out our website and look under the call signs section for details on how you can fly with us. And don't forget about our sister production, Priority One. They cover all things Star Trek, from the TV series to the MMO, the novels, the movies, and everything in between. Be sure to check them out at PriorityOnePodcast.com.
We'd like to thank the entire team at Guard Frequency and the Priority One Network. Our thanks go out to our community manager, Justin Chivalry Bean Lowmaster, our artist, Ben Sanders and Simon Charlton Edwards, our staff writer, Jace Pintad, and of course, our audio engineer, Mikey. Thanks to our syndication partner, The Base, and special thanks to Ronald Jenkins for his permission to use his music in our show. Visit ronaldjenkins.com for more of his work, where you can check out his latest album, Roads Deep. But above all, we especially want to thank you folks for tuning in. If no one's listening out there, the deep black gets pretty lonely.
Reduce thrust.
Down to 330, Carol 15. Squawk 7700.
Stay on the guard.
One of the first things that is puzzling scientists is the gases on the gas planet.
Recap of last week's community question. There's more than one, so let's make that plural and try that again. A lot more stuff that wasn't fleshed out.
Hey, Sonny, speak out. You say time? Time. Where's my fruity bar? I want my fruity bar.
So,
get back to it, Sonny. Get back to it. Come on. We ain't got all night.
Down boy. All right. Initially,
as it's become our custom, midway through the week, I'm sorry, not our custom, CIG's custom. Beep beep. See, now we were all thinking, I didn't even read the community question. I came up with that whole scenario. It's pretty good.
Remember, everyone, we're professionals.
That's right. We do this for a living. On the horizon for Elite, get it. Now I screwed that.
Yes, you're welcome.
We did get it. Thank you.
Pun is free of charge. Down boy.